you, my research focuses on social capital of scientists, and I think it could be interesting for you from two aspects. From one side, can't you hear me? So from one side, if we are talking about immigrants, we usually think about lower skilled immigrants. And we think that all the integration problems maybe are because they are lower skilled immigrants. But in my case, I'm touching scientists, and scientists are highly skilled, very highly skilled immigrants. And let's see how they deal with immigration and the issues which are related. And another thing is, when we talk about immigration, we touch European countries and other countries which are not so, which haven't been so open to immigration. But in my case, I will talk about United States, which has been always very open to immigrants and have worked very, very hard with integration. So let's see what's going on there. I'm looking at the social capital. What is social capital? Social capital is all your social ties. Formal, informal, institutional. And the idea is that through those social ties, you get the access to resources you don't have. It could be different. It could be money, it could be advice, it could be introducing to someone, it could be some kind of influence. It's a resource you're getting from your social ties. And those resources help you to improve the outcomes of the things you are doing. So that's the idea of the social capital and why it's important. Because if you look at the current research, that the social capital of immigrants is different from the social capital of the host society. Mostly because the immigrants face difficulties with forming the social ties. So they make the social capital a different way. And let's discuss about it a little bit in details later. So, and the other thing why I'm looking particularly at the social capital, because it's very crucial for scientists. Scientists use their social capital for a lot of reasons. For accessing information, for getting research funding, for getting access to data, for getting access to equipment, or even borrowing prestige. I made this research together with this very famous scientist, you know, this kind of getting prestige. And the research has shown that it has a proven impact on productivity. If you are richer in your social capital, then your productivity will be higher. If you are poorer, then most probably it will be weaker. And so, why I'm looking at the foreign-born scientists? At first I said it's under research. If we talk about immigrants, then usually we talk about lower skilled immigrants, but there is about 80 million highly skilled immigrants around the world, and they are highly in research. And the second thing is, if you look particularly at the scientists, that this is in general very global profession. Scientists move around where the money is, where the research is, where equipment is, and they have this, you know, they don't have that strong home attachment somehow, or somehow very bad feeling about other foreign scientists. They're kind of used to work with foreigners and kind of used to be immigrants themselves. So that's why it's a very, very interesting group. And there is a paradox in the social capital theories. As I told you, if people have more social capital, then their outcomes will be better. But in science, it's an interesting thing that foreigners, there are quantitative research and interviews, that foreign-born scientists usually tell about difficulties of integrating. They have issues with their colleagues, they have issues with assessment systems in the universities, they have issues with the host society and so on. But at the same time, there are like a lot of quantitative research showing that foreign-born scientists are more productive. They have more articles, they have higher quality articles, and there are, of course, theories trying to explain why it happens, and my research particularly looks at the social capital. So, and let's get into the hypothesis. So my hypotheses were pretty much taken from the migration theories, and the migration theories tell that, which are based on the lower skilled scientists. So I assumed that we will see probably something similar among higher skilled, but we have to test it. So among lower skilled immigrants, social networks are smaller. As I told you, they face difficulties with the integration in the host society. They very often form their ties with their co-nationals, and then their social circle is much smaller. Also, there are reports, as I told you, from the qualitative research where scientists, immigrant scientists report the same thing. They face difficulties with establishing social ties. And there are at least two aspects which directly influence it from the social capital theory. One is this lack of homophily, ideas that people flock together with people who are somehow similar to them. And if you get into other country, you are not so similar with everyone else, so you face difficulties when you make social connections. And another thing is, on the moment when you migrate, a lot of your social acquaintances remain in your home country, and you have to start from scratch all your social network. So with the time, it will be still smaller as for comparable local work. So that's my first hypothesis. The second hypothesis is another thing which is very typical for lower skilled immigrants, but they do, because their social capital is smaller, the number of ties is smaller, they try to use it more efficiently. Their connections are much stronger emotionally, with bigger trust, and they use those connections much more intensively. They get from one connection a lot of different kinds of help. It's professional help, it's financial help, it's social help, and it all comes from the one connection. So, and there are two forces which are behind it. That at the first, it's driven by the difficulty. Well, it's a necessity. You don't have connections, so you have to use it more efficiently. And another one is that common ethnicity or nationality is very strong, like the binding force for forming social ties. And especially if it's the immigration experience, it somehow amplifies those feelings that, oh, we are nationals, the representatives of one nationality in a foreign country, so we have to bind together. So it helps them to bind those social connections stronger. And the last thing is that I'm expecting that the foreign-born scientists will have larger foreign professional social capital. Again, you cannot make connections at your host country, so you are reaching out to your co-nationals because of your nationality, because of your previous networks, and so on. So, what we use it, I could use the NSF-funded data from the NetWise2 survey, and it was a large survey of about 4,500 scientists in 4 disciplines. And it covered many different types of institutions. So we have like comprehensive coverage of this STEM disciplines faculty in the United States. And the survey was very broad. It covered different aspects of the social capital, your connections, types of connections, what kind of help you to receive, the descriptions of the ties. And also it covered a large description of the professional outcomes. So we could measure if the social capital impacts your professional outcomes. What you do, how much you work, what's the outcomes, what's your publications, and so on. So, and let's see what happens. So we thought that the networks are smaller. Yes, they are. They are significantly smaller if you look at the professional network size of people with whom you usually work together. Then for American-born, it will be 9.5 persons, and for foreigners, it's just 7.24, and it's like a statistically huge difference. But there is a point. If we start looking at the details of what's going on, then it's an interesting thing that if you look at the research collaborators, that the statistical difference between it becomes smaller. You see, that instrumental network is not that different as the social capital altogether. And even better, if you look at the assistance they receive from the network, the difference is almost insignificant. it's just the t-stat is just 2, which is very close to this level of being insignificant. And that means another thing, that even if their networks are smaller, they still receive the help they need for their professional duties. And the second thing is that, So the second thing, what I was telling you, that I expect their social ties will be much closer, much more intense. But that's not true. In all measures which are used to measure the strength of ties, like the frequency of interaction, is it friendship or not friendship, that is not true. The professional social ties of immigrants, at least highly skilled, are not closer or stronger than the similar ties of host society. But there is a huge exception. The much larger part of the networks are instrumental. They don't make social ties outside their professional or instrumental needs. And again, those ties are not stronger. Those even very instrumental ties, they are not stronger as for local people. So, and the third thing was, okay, we expected they will have more foreigners in their networks, which is again not true. Yes, statistically, on average, they do have larger foreign networks. But when you look deeper at the regression analysis, it shows that this is not because they're foreigners, but this is caused by their education. Actually, the foreigners with a foreign education have more foreign networks than other foreigners. And here's the details. Okay, I'll just get to the summary, because it's covered already in summary. So, yes, foreign-born scientists do have significantly smaller professional networks, but if we look specifically at those social ties which are closely connected to their professional activities, the difference is much smaller. It means they use their networks much more efficiently. The second thing is, no, their ties are not stronger, but they much more strategically choose with whom to make relationship, which is different from the lower skilled immigrants. Because my explanation would be that lower skilled immigrants don't have this choice. They just don't have this opportunity to make more ties, so they make them very, very strong. In a case of scientists, yes, they face difficulties with building the social capital, but they still have this chance to choose the right people to work or to talk with. So, the third one is the US educated foreigners. There is like a big problem. The big problem is that their foreign capital is weak. It's as weak as for all Americans. It's not stronger. It's not bigger. And another aspect is their American capital is as weak as for foreigners. So it's a double-edged sword. They don't develop foreign social capital, and they don't develop the local social capital. But then we look at the immigrants who are with the foreign capital. They have foreign networks. Most probably they are developed before coming to the United States, because if you have foreign education, that means that you are more established scientists who came later and brought actually your networks with you. But most probably when you are in States, you don't develop like a huge foreign network. You just live on the ties that you have. The biggest problem was also that the domestic networks of the establishment scientists were super small, and they mostly were bound to their departments, which is again very typical for lower skilled immigrants, that their networks are so small and usually geographically bounded just to their small location, and they don't reach out, which is a huge problem in science, because they could bring in some knowledge from abroad, but they cannot distribute it in America. it remains just in the department. So that's what I told you. And finally, what I saw that those foreign ties, they don't bring any productivity advantage. There is like an idea in science. If you have more foreign ties, you bring in new knowledge, and then you become more productive. It has been tested, it has been proven. It's not true for foreigners. For foreigners, actually, those foreign ties are helping just to substitute the lack of local ties. And I think, what are conclusions? The conclusions is one. So we talked about foreign-born scientists as having exportable human capitals, and therefore they don't have problems establishing ties. That's wrong. Their social capital, and that actually means the integration into society, remains very weak. And the difficulties we see are similar as among lower-skilled immigrants. The second thing, yes, there is a difference. If lower-skilled immigrants just live with very small networks and cannot expand it, in this case, seems that they overcome difficulties with more strategically selecting with whom to make ties, and they are a little bit more flexible in that. So, and this is interesting probably for all the migration research, that I could prove that actually maintaining strategically ties and also reaching out to the foreign ties helps immigrants to overcome difficulties that they face with social networks. That really helps them with the productivity. And the two things are, as I told you, the problem is specifically for the United States. Despite focusing, being very open to immigrants, we see that the graduate education does not integrate foreign-born scientists. Even if the education is considered one of the strongest integration forces, it doesn't help. Yes? And also, as I told you, the very alarming is the weak integration of established scientists into American faculty. It's bad for both sides. For them, because they don't have access to American resources, and also for America, because Americans cannot access foreign resources through that. Thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you. Is there any questions from the hall?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for interesting lecture. Okay, I'm a student from Georgia, and I have a question for you. The most popular one, I guess, in the foreign affairs nowadays, we are talking about migrants. So what do you think, like your personal idea, what will happen to migrants after newly elected president? Because we know that he's not very welcome to the migrants. So, and the second question would be like, would America be so developed if they did not have so many migrants in there? Like, yeah, that is the question. Thank you.
Oh, you're from which Georgia? Yeah. The state or the country?
No, country.
Great. So, because I studied in Georgia as a state. So, and you asked me difficult political questions. And you know, Americans don't answer political questions. But still, at least I can tell you, I think we already see at least the chilling effect on migrants. You know, you even don't have to change the regulation, but we see the chilling effect, which could affect also how the immigration authorities work, how they are treated at the institutions, how they are treated in the labor market. I think those effects, they are already pretty much have already started there. I don't think it will, even if officially there won't be any changes to the migration laws, I don't see that the immigration will increase there. And if we talk about American economy, well, it's still, its growth is much based on the growth of the labor force. So the immigration is very essential for them. Yes, they have quite a big domestic increase, which is much better than in Europe, but still they really depend on immigrants, on all senses. And if you look at the highly skilled professions in the same science, in academia, 75% of postdocs are foreigners. More than half of scientists are from abroad in engineering. So they cannot live without it anyway. Yep.